Yes.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for coming out in this and braving this weather. Do you know, when I got here earlier today, I was like, oh, I've come all the way from Devon. And there's 2 people here from LA. I thought I'd done really well. Anyway, welcome everybody to the launch of Tony's book, Who Knows? The Making of a Rock Movie, which I think just explains what's in the tin. So I'm here with 2 rock stars in their own rights. Tony Klinger, of course, the author of the book and prolific filmmaker, and Danny Clifford, prolific photographer, whose photography features in here, and lots of it's over there as well. And I just want to give a nod to the amazing Julie here, who's sitting doing one of her translations, which will become evident as we go along. Julie is the artist of all this beautiful work that you see here. Anyway, let's start with some questions. Yeah, give them water because I'm going to ask some difficult questions. Yeah, we're all right. We're sorted. Yeah. So, guys, it seems really hard to sit in the middle of you. It's like you're going to argue.
No, we're not going to argue.
How did you 2 meet?
My first memory of Tony was not so much Tony, but it was Bill Curbishley and the receptionist at Trinifold, where I had an office inside the Who's office, thanks to Keith Moon, who dragged me in there one day. And I used to hear the receptionist, Yvonne, saying, "Bill, I've got Tony Klinger for you." And then I'd hear a lot of groaning from upstairs and moaning. And as time went on, the name Tony Klinger became part of the sort of the fixtures in the office, and Sydney Rose as well. And I found it quite funny because I didn't really know you at all then, really, but the screaming and shouting that was going on up the spiral staircase up there was brilliant. You know, I'd be in my little office. If I can just explain, I'm a photographer and I never needed an office, so I was very sort of amused when one day I was driving around the West End with Keith Moon in my mum's car, which was the smallest car in the world, him dressed as in his riding gear, or Elizabeth I, can't remember, and he said, "Stop here." So we stopped outside the ship and we ran up the stairs into the offices, which were the management's office. I didn't even know where I was going, and he said to Jackie Curbishley, "It's my mate Danny, can you have an office?" And I went, "What?" And she said, "Yeah, you can have that one." And that's when I was implanted in their office. So that's my first memory of Tony coming in and out of there, and the battles that were going on upstairs with you. And I don't remember Sydney in there, but I remember Sydney and you soon. Sydney saying to me, "I need you to do some stills for us." And I found my invoice pad the other day in the.
Did we pay it?
Yeah. Half of it. The other $7,000 is still no. But no, you did, and it was it was amazing. You know that those beginning. But that's how I first came across Tony and the battles that ensued above my office and up there. Was a spiral staircase.
I remember him very well because he was a hobgoblin sitting downstairs. He had huge hair.
Oh,
at the time.
you
He
flattered
did
me.
have huge hair. I had plenty myself, and Sidney wasn't there because he didn't want to get involved in the fight.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah. And so we had warfare started between me and Bill and carried on for 3 years. Never really stopped, actually.
Yeah.
And the consequences of which were some or other. We made a film that turned out pretty terrific. And this book relates to the stories that actually happened. And the bits about the making of the film were all contemporaneous. I wrote as we were going, so it's accurate. And to be fair to the Who, when we finished it, the original manuscript, my original publisher said, "I won't publish it unless they say it's okay, because we don't want a lawsuit." And so they sent it to Bill Curbishley and the band, and given their credit, they all said yes, it's the truth, and publish. And so I never had any problem with them after. I only had the problem making the film.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, can I just bring up something that I haven't we did speak briefly about it, but I'd like to bring it up now. In the film, there are a couple of photographs in there that Bill Curbishley nicked off me and they're using it, and you never played it, Clifford. Well, you wouldn't have known about it, would you?
No,
but he did. It's typical of Bill, though. No, but he nicked. In the film, there's a couple of, I can't remember which shots. One's of Keith putting pot of vodka over Norman Gunston's head at Charlton, and there was another shot in there. When I saw the film, I thought, fucking cheeky bastard. If there was a photograph of the Who, Bill thought he owned the picture.
Yeah, well, that's how
it.
it was, yeah. Well,
You know,
the interesting thing is, I was on a percentage of the film, obviously, and we've now come out with this, and we were circulating it to Who fan groups and things like that all over the world, and the reactions have been fantastic. Some of them read it already in different countries, and then somebody started posting, and then it's grown. It's still showing the film in all over America. And they still haven't paid me.
Amazing.
Excuse me, the people from LA, maybe we could, yeah. Stop that, okay. So, I mean, it interests me, Tony, because it's called The Making of a Rock Movie. But I know in conversation with you, sometimes it's been like, well, it was almost the breaking of Tony Klinger. Do you want to speak a little to that?
Well, it's how not to make a rock movie. It was tremendously difficult because we made one big mistake. When we started the process of getting it developed, Bill Kirby was asking me, like, well, what do you think the chances of getting this finance distributed? And I said, well, I can check it out. And so we spoke to all the major companies, and every one of them said, yes, we want to do it. They all offered us the money. And then he turned around, and this is typical Bill, and said, well, if they're all offering to do it, we'll do it.
Yeah.
We don't need their money. And so that was a consequence, and my mistake was accepting that, because once you've got the person who's in the film being the finance of the film, you've got war. And it was a big mistake, and one I've never repeated, because you can't satisfy them both ways. And so as a consequence of that, it was, well, I resigned from the film 7 times.
I remember a session of you leaving and you're out of it, and then you're back again.
Was it dramatic?
It was dramatic for me, because I was like a kid in that. I mean, I was 17. I just started to drive when I was in that office, and it was all, the whole world was new to me, especially being embedded with the Who amongst other bands I was with. So to hear the shenanigans and the goings on there, and the storming down the corridor, you know,
I did a lot of storming.
yeah, but there's a lot of my office was at the bottom, almost the bottom of the staircase where Bill's was, and I was opposite Chris Chappell's office. And the corridor was like, you know, it was, you know, I found it quite entertaining actually. But
well, the threats against my person got bigger and bigger the more times I resigned. And one of the reasons I couldn't agree at that stage to signing an NDA, because I felt that was impinging on my rights, and so I refused. And I was the only one that refused. They said, well, that's because you're going to write a book. I said, if I wanted to, I shall. And what I didn't do, and the book will testimony to that, what I decided not to do was tell the stories out of school, that things that I learned about private lives, that I thought that's not appropriate.
no, yeah.
So the things that are to do with the film and the making of the film and the arguments about the film, yes, that I talked about and in detail. But the things about I learned as people, that I kept aside, because I think, you know, what happens in Vegas should stay in Vegas.
Yeah. Or Wardour Street.
Or Waters.
Vegas, Wardour Street.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Your life story.
Oh yeah,
as well.
well, I don't. I mean, I write quite a bit about my life, and I never write. Oh, I see. You know, Lynn was actually. Oh, I see. Right.
She's having a go at me.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, he's a bastard. Avril, honestly, what a bastard you are.
It's a good job I'm in the middle. So when did you start writing the book, Tony?
Well, we were living in Los Angeles at the time, and I had some time. We were working on other projects with my friend over there, David Courtney, and we were living there as they were. And what happened was, I felt like I was poisoned by the experience. It had been such a nightmare, and I felt, how can I get it out? And the only thing I could think of as a writer was to write it. And so I sat down almost immediately. I went to America and started writing. And originally wrote something like 5 times more than was in the book, like 400,000 or 500,000 words. And then I thought, well, I can't publish that. And so I then narrowed it down. And David will remember this. I sent it to my manager at the time, who sent it to a publisher with the words on it, not read for libel,
Yeah. Good stuff.
which turned up every publisher in the country. Not a very wide. It didn't last long as Wine Over, but that was, that's why. And so it was almost immediate. And then I've refined it, and gone into other details. And so what this one has that those didn't have is it's got proper photos, which our friend Danny here took.
So kind.
It's true. And then we also got some material from Danny, because he remembers the period just like I do, and so his it's better to have more than one person saying how it was. And we also got some material from Dougal, who's Peter Butler, who is supposed to be here but he's not here. And he was Keith Moon's right-hand man for more than a decade. And so he got some of his material, some of his pictures, a few. And we also we did a sequence with Keith Moon on the beach at Trancas, which is next to Malibu in California, and that was photographed, including Zach Starkey as a little boy, learning to play drums with Keith on the beach, and she was going to be Mrs. Ringo Starr, and never got past the fiancé stage.
That's quite a dramatic bit to read in the book, I have to say.
Yeah.
All the stuff that went on around the beach, I felt quite traumatised.
Did you?
Yeah.
Take another pill. That's some of my sparkling water.
So Danny, obviously, you've taken lots of photographs, but what made you decide to come together with Tony to work on this book?
Well, Tony asked me to. I mean, we were chatting on. We were chatting online. I think I sent you. I saw a photo you put up of you, and I thought, "Fucking hell, Tony."
I said it was terrible.
You did, and I agreed with you. It was a picture. I said, you put it, I think you put it up for. Say, does anyone think this is as bad as I think it is, or something like that?
Exactly.
And I remember saying something like, "It's worse."
Yeah.
And so I said, "Shall I come and do some pictures of you sometime?" So we acquainted after years of, The weird thing is that I was living in LA, not at the same time. I don't think so. It might have been, but we didn't see each other. I mean, I was, and here we are, back in sort of the same orbit.
Two old farts like looking.
Exactly. But so Tony asked me if I would like to, if I got any photographs to go with it. Then we spent a day driving around London like two old cuckers together, and we did.
Cracking photo.
Well, we did. The idea was Tony wanted. I mean, those Who fans will know that the Who did a shot out in. It was Long Island.
No, New York.
Was it?
Manhattan. Yeah.
Right, and
you had and
you
you
know
did
more than
London.
anyone about that. Yeah, so we couldn't stretch it to go to New York to do the shot. So we would drive around London, and we found a place which I won't go into at the moment where it was, but we shot that in London. And then Tony said we got the other pictures that we could use in the book. And I mean, I photographed the Kilburn Gaumont concert. I was with Keith at. I mean, I've got lots of Who stuff. I mean, I've been around the Who for a long time. But in relation to the film, I had shots around that time from that Kilburn thing, which I don't know if you're going to go on to that, but but that was brilliant. I mean, how I felt, But that's my involvement. So when I sent the photos in, Tony said, "Do you want to write a little bit about the photographs?" So I wrote a bit about my each of the photographs that were in there. So my take on how it happened, what didn't happen, what's going to happen, what should have happened, price of apples.
So Kilburn,
The
do you want to pick up there?
What happened was the band had decided that they didn't want to play in the public, and I wanted to film them playing to the public, and they wouldn't agree to it. And so we thought it might be a good idea not to tell them, but to phone anonymously some radio stations and say, "Free Who concert, film state at such a time." And we thought maybe a couple hundred people turn up. Well, thousands turned up.
It was absolutely
The
not.
the traffic in London gridlocked.
It was an afternoon.
Yeah, in the
It was an afternoon.
And they kind of realised that one of us was responsible, and I was denying all responsibility. And they literally, Pete Townsend wanted to hit me over the head with his guitar, and I was the other side if there was like a
Would
gap.
have been a good photo.
I'd have got it. I'd have got it.
And he was shouting and saying he wanted to know what we wanted him to play. This happened a couple of times, and I knew he was a follower of the Maharaj, Meher Baba.
Yeah, Mayor Bub.
And I said, and his favourite tune was "Begin the Begin." So I shouted out, "Play begin, the begin." Well, then you really wanted to kill me. But I thought it was funny.
He can be a stroppy little bugger, can't he?
Yeah, yeah. And so, but if you look at that film, the sequence with the lasers and all that, that's the best bit of the film. And so we were right, he was wrong.
That was what I found funny. I knew that it was going to happen because I was in the office, and Chris Chappell had said to me, "Tomorrow we're going to go to Kilburn." It was all hush hush. And as we were about to leave, I had a really cheap small transistor radio on I had no possessions, cameras. That was it. And on the radio, I heard the London radio station was Capital Radio at the time. It's still around, but that was the big station in London then. And I won't sing the jingle for you because you thought, but and I think it was a DJ Nicky Horn, I think it was, who said, if anyone wants to see the Who, as we were leaving, I went, I thought it was secret. He's going, "Get to Kilburn State Gaumont now, it's happening now." And I thought, whoa, and when we got there, we couldn't even park anywhere near it. It was like mobbed. We went in and I photographed it all, and it was really funny because that was my first real time with Jeff Stein.
Yeah.
As well, which was with he was a little aloof. Well, I won't go into detail of what he was like with me anyway. What he didn't know is I was going to give him a clump if he carried on. That's what would have happened. But I photographed it all anyway, and it was an exciting day.
It was an exciting day. It was exciting. It was exciting, and that's the one thing I think he ever agreed with me about. Was actually he agreed.
Is
that
that
we
right?
should do that. Yeah. And we couldn't. How can you make a film with the Who without a proper
Well,
live performance?
you'd think he would have to agree to that because if he'd said no, I mean that's good news for him.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah.
good news to get that footage, which was amazing to be there. And it's, every time I see a slight bit of footage from that, it just immediately you know what Pete was wearing, the brownie sort of top with it, and I every time you see it, it's great memories for me. That.
And I don't remember how many camera crews we had. We had a lot of camera crews today.
In my photo, you can see loads.
Well, they all were wearing dark glasses and ear things, and it was like, "This is the Who. You're here to film the Who."
Yeah.
Was it too loud for them?
Listen to you.
Yeah.
Have you got a favourite memory from making the film?
Favourite? Yes.
The end.
Yeah, very much so. When we were first bit of filming, well, I won't go into the background details, was in their studios. They owned Shepperton Studios, or half of it at that time. They then bought the rest. And in the Shepperton Film Studios, it's pretty isolated. And we had the studio doors closed, and the band comes on, and they hadn't played together at that stage for 2 or 3 years. And they were going to play something, and we shouted out, "Barbara O'Reilly," and they went no, and then we said Barbara Ann, because we can't, I think somebody got confused, and they just played it, and it blasted us off. It was unbelievable. Now I've filmed a lot of rock acts. I've worked with Deep Purple and other people, but I've never felt that power. And they started to play a few tunes, and in playing those few tunes, and it was extraordinary, but people, we hadn't announced it or anything, people that were nothing to do with anything somehow knew and were banging on the doors to get in. It was extraordinary, and there's a special something to a band that can do that. At that stage with that rock lineup were the best rock act live in the world.
A phenomenal band.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. It was around that, just sorry to digress a touch, but it's just after I got myself involved with another artist. Well, I was getting myself involved, and I was going to America for the first time, and I went to Keith's apartment.
Drop the name, Bob Dylan.
It was Bob Dylan, and I went to Victoria Station, and his driver, I don't know if any of you, Melissa remember, he had a driver called Richard, who we called Big Dick, because he was very tall. Do you must have met him, a big bloke, his nose, somebody had reshaped his nose for him. And they dropped me at Victoria Station. And anyway, I ended up getting on a standby flight, got to America, got to Los Angeles, and I remember I was absolutely in awe of America. I'd always watched TV in this country on Sunday afternoons and seen American films, and here I am, Los Angeles, sitting on a suitcase, there's palm trees, yellow taxis, blue sky, and I was absolutely dreaming. And anyway, it was my auntie picked me up, and that's when she got on the radio, and Keith had died in London. So I literally said goodbye to him, got to London, and he died. The point I'm making is that every radio station that we switched on my trip out there was the Who were on it, or the Stones. So either Who Are You, or Some Girls, and the Cars, and Boston. That's all I was hearing. It was amazing. And the Who were just ginormous globally. And that album you know, Who Are You was out, and that was September '78, obviously when it happened. But phenomenal times, you know, really.
Well, I was in LA at that time. I'd gone back for business or something, and got a turned on the news, and there was a woman that used to be on television there, called Rhoda Barrett, and she was announcing the death of Keith Moon, and I didn't know what to do because I kind of knew it was going to happen, but not that
It's when it
precise
happens.
moment.
Yeah.
And I phoned up and got in contact with Roger Daltrey and said, "Is it true? What?" And he's only 32. And he said, "He wasn't 32. He was 96." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, he lived 3 times faster than you, I mean, and that was true. I mean, well, we have another lot of stories coming about Keith Moon, but I'll save those for another day.
It's funny, something I didn't realise. I mean, it's probably common knowledge, but I'm the last one to hear about it. But I went out for with Pete Townsend. I went to he said we're doing a dinner. It's just before the COVID lockdowns. So we've got a dinner in London. He said we're raising money for the Teenage Cancer Trust. Are you going to come to the dinner? So I thought, oh, here we go. It's going to be 10 grand a ticket, and he's inviting me to get, you know. As it happens, I didn't have to pay for it because I do enough for that charity anyway. So I've gone along, and it was the cast from Quadrophenia were going to be there. So he said to me, you know, the cast are going to be there. So I thought, great, I'll take my script. I'd got a script from the film because I did stills on the film, and I took it along and made them all sign it. But whilst we're there, I was sitting with Pete and Bill Kerbishley, our mate. Did you shudder when I shuddered then? With Pete, with Bill, and we were talking about Keith Moon for a minute, and we were talking about that day, and he said we had to delay letting the press know because Annette found him around lunchtime because she came out the bedroom and Keith was on the couch, I think, and then she phoned, and then Bill, and they kept it quiet till 5 or 6 in the evening or something like that, and I said to Bill, you know, how come he died? What was it? He said, well, he was only supposed to take 2 and he took 30 fucking 2. So I said, oh, well, that will probably do it then, wouldn't it? That would do it. Or something like that, you know, some phenomenal quantity, which was typical of Keith. Just whatever he did was just over the top, you know.
You just mentioned charity there, Danny, and some of the money from the sale of the book is going to a particular charity. Do you want to say a little bit about
We're
that?
going to be signing copies, and the money that is the additional money for signing all goes to the Rennie Grove Peace Hospice in Watford, well, Hertfordshire, and that's it's particular poignant for both of us because Danny's mother-in-law passed away recently at that hospice, and my daughter-in-law is the medical director of that hospice. And it does wonderful work, as Danny's going to say. They're phenomenal.
It's phenomenal.
And so we felt that would be an appropriate thing for us to donate.
It's just one of those things, a hospice, where people think, oh, right, great, they're great, whatever. But in the situation when you've got somebody that you love that is in the last knockings of their existence, and they're in a place where people really care. We could all go in and visit my mother-in-law. It's my wife sitting out there who's not listening to a word I'm saying. It's her mother. You're talking about your mum. No, you. What are you chatting about? EastEnders again. Anyway, so it's good that she's not listening. But her mum was one. Sorry, just rewind it. Her mum was actually one of the most wonderful people you've ever met. I used to take her on to meet bands on tour, and she spent time with Rory Gallagher and me and the Status Quo and loads of bands like. She was a wonderful person. So to be in the hospice where you can go in 24/7, if you want to take in your pet, which we did, and you want to spend time with her, and they are the most caring, wonderful people. If she was in a hospital, they can't cope in hospitals because they're dealing with people to make them better, to get them out. Hospices are something that are really, really, really important. And this particular group of hospice, the group, there's about 15 of them I think they've got now, they're partially funded by the government, and they need money privately, desperately. So, you know, my small portion of the book is all going there, and the signing or whatever. So anything that we can do. So it's not something that you think, well, right, it's hospice. It's actually a really important thing. If there's somebody you love that's being looked after in a hospice, it's very important. So that's why we're doing
They're
it.
places full of angels, aren't they?
They really are phenomenal. They really
are,
need some
Special
help.
people.
Yeah, they really need help in there.
I think before we wind up, because I know that you guys could just, you know, we could
Go on
make
further.
another movie
just
here,
warming
couldn't we?
Just warming up the old
But
boat.
would someone like to ask a question?
What year were you
Yes.
in LA?
I went from 78 for a year or two. I was backwards and forwards, and then I was in New York, and then I was back here, and then I came back finally because she's listening now, aren't you? My girlfriend, who's lucky enough to become my wife. You are, aren't you? She refused to live in LA with me, although we love it out there. Just that I was a bit complicated. But my parents lived there, and they were overpowering and whatever. She's just she wants to stay here with her family. So I got it. I understood that you can't live in the middle. It's a bit wet. So I thought I'll come back here. So I based myself here in London.
You were going to ask a question? Sorry, someone else.
I was just going to ask if you guys could go back between 69 and 79 and choose an artist or a band that you hadn't done it. What documentary, what band or artist would you choose if you could go back now, and why?
Me, definitely be the Beatles.
Typical.
Yeah.
Can I be controversial? The Beatles. It have to be the Beatles.
They finished in 69 or 70.
They 70 they finished. So he said 69 to whatever. I mean, I was only that big at 69. I was 9. I mean, but I still would have. Yeah, Beatles.
Yeah.
Then I never got to work with the Beatles as a band. I worked with the 3 of them. But the Beatles.
Well, I had a couple of run-ins with different members of the band.
Run-ins?
Well, no, in a
Was it you
friendly
that punched
way.
Paul McCartney?
One of them was when we were editing The Kids Are Alright. In the next editing room, they were editing Wings Over America. They had a letter to the lady who did okay called Thelma Schumacher, who won the Oscar for Raging Bull and other things. And he saw our film, and he liked it a lot. And he made her go back to their clapperboards and start again editing their film. So Thelma Schumacher hates me, and I did nothing to her.
Hi, Thelma.
I just wanted to ask each of you, what was the most challenging part of working on the film? Like, you had a photographer role, you had like a more kind of producer role.
I can answer mine quickly. I did very little. I just photographed a bit. Tony did
But
everything.
as a photographer, what was the most kind of difficult part working with the band and like getting into where you?
All I can say is because really everything here is Tony's, not mine. But working in that situation, to answer your question, working with the Who, which I've done over the years,
Yeah.
they are particularly awkward at most of the time.
And then there was a time he forgot to put the film in.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
The biggest problem with the Who is that intrinsic is that Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey, basically it's a love-hate relationship. They basically most of the time hate each other.
Hate them.
And so as a consequence, it's whichever one likes, the other one dislikes. Whatever one loves, the other one hates.
Right.
And so you've got a continual problem because you can't make them all happy all the time. And when we were it showed up when we were editing the film, and it was the first screening for the band, and they sat there with stopwatches, and I go, "What are you doing?" And they were timing how long each was on the screen because it had to be equal. And then when we did the music mix, the first music mix, Townsend came and said, "You've got to make the vocals louder and my guitar." So we did that, and then Emerson came and said, "No, the bass has got to be heavier." But there's
It's normal stuff
and
in
then
the
Roger, and so it just went on and on and on. And eventually they did the whole thing again in LA, cost hundreds of thousands extra dollars, and it was pretty much the same as it was in the first place. But they were satisfied. It was insanity.
Yeah.
Great practice for parenting by the sounds of it.
Yeah, well, I did okay with my kids.
There was someone else. No? I imagine that there was someone else.
I'll ask a question. My wife Melissa, who's over there originally from New York, she saw a 2.5 hour version of The Kids Are Alright. What happened to that?
They buried it. There was a 2.5 hour version. And that's where I remember you from all those days ago. And it was, yeah. It's like, if you think of it in this context, when a film is very successful, and it was in its own way very successful, especially in America, usually there's a director's cut, this cut, that cut. But there was such a tenuous relationship between everybody that things that weren't theirs got buried. And people, there's evidence of that kind of thing on other films too. I mean, I remember when we were looking up material for The Kids Are Alright, some of which we got at the Warner Studio library, which had been flooded, so there was a bit of trouble getting it. When we went through the stuff, we found enough material for them to make Woodstock 2. Woodstock 2 was what we found, not what they found. And as a consequence, we learned that you can't. You can keep going forever. The truth is, someone somewhere has that copy, but I don't know where it is.
You have to write a second book then, Tony, by the
Nothing.
sounds of it. When it's a 2.5 hour film, you should be double up on the book.
Can I just say one thing at the moment? That whilst we're talking about questions from New York and whatever, Melissa and Gary are responsible for many things to do with The Who.
Yes, they are.
But one of the things that is in the book is that without them there would be no blue plaque in Wardour Street above the old marquee
right.
to commemorate Keith Moon. So it's you two that actually pulled that together, which is quite, yeah, absolutely. Unsung heroes that a lot of people don't talk about. Yeah, very good.
Well, guys, I'm loving this conversation, but I'm also aware that, you know, probably about time to wrap this up and continue chatting afterwards. But
You can see some pictures there as well. I should turn it around the other way, but there's lots of Who shots.
but thank you so much, everyone. And books are here, and the two gentlemen who are here to sign them for you. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Danny.
Melissa and Gary there in the front. And Alan Rogan as well. There's Alan Rogan.